Hey everybody, it's Romania Black, and we're on episode 9 of Monster. I couldn't wait. No. I watched episode 8 like a few days ago, and I was like, I have to know. We had a 5-month time skip, and Tenma, what we doing, honey? I'm like, he has a gun. He's in a car going to Verdun. He's where this murder is just taking place. I'm pretty sure Johan's baiting him to come out of hiding. Why has he been in hiding? What's been going on? There's so many questions as to what has been going down these last 5 months since he made his escape from the hospital. Like, how is Lunge feeling about all this? Obviously, Lunge's like, you're a murderer and we have to track you down. And then how's Eva taking all of this? Because we learned a lot about her character last episode. Where is Tenma's thoughts on all this? Where did he go to after he left the hospital? Where could he hide to? What's Nina been up to? Where's she in all this? I was thinking about this the other day. And I was like, yeah, the one thing that's kind of crazy is that if Tenma had Nina with him, if she had just stuck around, he probably could have he could have told her to go to a safe house or try to help her find a place to stay. But once she leaves, he goes back to work and everything. And I'm like, if only he knew where she went, even if she had just said, hey, I need to go back. And he's like, okay, let me know so that I can make sure you're okay and check in on you. But I don't know. But then that would have, there's such a question of where are Johan's eyes and ears? What can he see? And where is he knowing? How does he know about people's whereabouts? How does this affect things? It's there's so many questions, right? So many questions. And I'm like, I just don't know what to do. So it's going to be interesting, right? To see where it goes. But man, I couldn't wait. I was like, I need to know. I was afraid of people spoiling, so I was like, I need to go ahead and watch this episode and at least hopefully find out some backstory, because I feel like that's what they're going to lead into. We ended the last episode with a 5-month time skip, and now I feel like we're going to go back and retrace our steps a little bit and at least learn a little bit about where Tenma's been those last 5 months. And then if the episode goes back to the present by the end of it, I don't know. But I have lots of questions, as I said in the last reaction, and I'm really hoping we get some answers. So we'll see, right? We'll see. So I hope you all are enjoying the series as much as I am. I am a big sucker for a good mystery. I love being surprised. I love the twists and turns of a story like this. And the character work is great. And it's just been so much fun so far. And this is episode 9. We still have a lot of time to go. So with that being said, we are going to start episode 9 of Monster and just see what happens, right? And we're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's go. Oh my gosh, this episode was really good and really understated. I was kind of just soaking up the atmosphere of it and how quiet it was. That was the fastest 23 minutes that went by with virtually no intense, crazy, this series so far has been just a roller coaster of just stuff happening beat for beat and it being fast paced and thrilling and stuff. And here everything kind of takes a step down and slows down, but it went by so quickly. It did not drag. It was just one thing after another. And there's so much under the surface from this episode that I'm like, oh my gosh, it's kind of incredible how much is in this one episode. But within the first 5 minutes, I was like, well, Whiteboard Coon needs to come out because we've got lots of things to go over. Lunge is curious. Lunge is so interesting in this episode. I'm so fascinated by his reaction to Hugo's story and the whole thing about Hugo and the metaphor about the mother and the baby bird and whatever's happening there. There's so much under the surface, right? So I'm going to put Lunge over here. And then we have Hugo. And then we have Tenma. And then we have the girl. Which I don't think we get her name in this, right? And just the things happening with them this episode. But the girl and the seasoned soldier. This show does such an impressive job of making you think about like the human condition and consequences of actions and taking responsibility and, you know, the decisions that we make and about parenting and about responsibility and duty. And it's just, there's all this going on. It's fascinating. But yeah, so we go back to the very beginning and then we have Tenma saying that he's going to Verdun and he's like, I don't know if I can meet up with him or not, but I've got to try. He's like, I have to go there. And so, and it shows him getting ready, like, to be able to draw the gun out really quickly, right? Oh my gosh, Tenma. Tenma is on a mission to go to Verdun. He's going to Verdun to meet Johan. Because he saw that the murders are taking place there and Johan is luring him in, but he has the gun. It's like, okay, all right, what do we do? And so we'll go back past this OP and get to it. So curiously enough, we don't start out immediately 5 months ago. We're still in the present time, but Lunge is basically interviewing Hugo. He's tracked him down, right? And we see this little girl who is very easily amused is just jumping off into the puddles. Like, that's all she's doing. She's just entertaining herself. And we have these German officers here going in and out of the building. And they just kind of look at her. It's curious. They just look at her, but they don't pay her no mind. They don't say anything. They just watch her jumping off the steps. And they're like, okay. And they greet each other, but they just go about their business. Like, she's not a big problem. And so we are in Gießen police station in Germany. All right. So we established that we are, and I've probably butchered that pronunciation, but we're in Gießen, Germany, at the police station. All right. So you got your start in the French Foreign Legion. So Lunge is interviewing Hugo, and so he was with the French Foreign Legion. We get this background on him within the first minute of this exposition. And after going off on your own, you joined the fighting in Nicaragua in 1979. So to paint how old he is, okay, so he went on his own to Nicaragua in 1979. Because it's what, 1995 at this point? Is that right? It was 86, and then 9 years later, so it's 1995, right? So that was a considerable amount of time ago. That was 95 to 85. That was, like 14 years ago. Say it. And then I love that Lunge is like tapping. Lunge is like typing to like recall everything from his mind palace that he knows about Hugo that he's been researching on. And he said from 81 to 84, you aided Afghan rebels. So from 1981 to 1984, he aided Afghan rebels. Okay, rebel guerrillas. All right. And then from there, he said in 1987, you played a central role in Mossad's secret operation. So 1987 with Mossad operation. So yeah, he's had a history of being in battle after battle and planning to assassinate Islamic extremists. Okay. So against Islamic extremists. Okay. And so from there, that was 87. And he's like, a brilliant fighting record, Hugo Bernhardt. And he's just not impressed. He's just like, okay. He said, since a mercenary such as you is sponsoring this seminar, I'm sure you have some outstanding students graduating. Okay, so he is sponsoring a police seminar. Okay, so he's basically training these police force members, and he's a former mercenary. Okay. And he says, it might be a good idea to send our young ones to attend your lectures and have you whip them into shape. And then the one officer's like, oh yeah, we could do that. Yeah, sure. And he says, incidentally, was this man outstanding. I believe he showed up at your training grounds about 5 months ago. So Lunge knows he's on Tenma's tail and knows that 5 months ago he went to Hugo. That does beg some questions though. Like, where did Lunge get his information? Like, I guess he got a tip off. I'm assuming maybe he got a tip off. The guess would be that someone tipped him that he saw Tenma show up or head towards Hugo or ask Hugo. So probably Tenma asked around. He probably asked around to find someone to train him. And probably wherever he ended up at on that original ride out of there, or however he ended up at on the trail right after he left the hospital, he's like, I need to find somebody that can teach me how to use a gun. So he probably asked around the locals, being like, hey, do you know anybody that's really good at this? And they were like, oh, well, this guy, here's his training grounds. If you want to learn how to shoot a gun, you go to him. He trains all the police cadets. Okay, he's a former mercenary. All right. And that's probably how Tenma got in line with him. Because I was wondering that, I kept thinking in the episode we'd flash back to when they first met, but we don't do that. The anime leaves that out. But Lunge is on the trail. So Lunge is on the trail after Tenma. He's just always a few steps behind. He's on the trail, but he's just a few steps behind and isn't quite able to locate him yet. He was brilliant with a scalpel, but did he show an aptitude with a pistol? So Lunge's one knowing, he's like, I have no wish to speak about my students. And Lunge's like, I see. And there's this tension between them. But somehow Lunge gets him to speak. Somehow he gets him to talk. Did he bring up the girl or not? Did he use that as leverage? I don't know. We're not given that concrete answer. We go from Hugo not talking at all about Tenma to Lunge probably prodding and prying. Now, whether or not he brought up the girl or not, I think that would seem beneath Lunge, but I don't know. If he's that desperate for information, I don't know. But somehow he was trying to track him down and gather up. He wants to know. He knows he has skill with a scalpel. Does that translate to using a pistol? And they'll talk about that very, very distinct difference between those two things in this. But yeah, so we cut to 5 months prior where they're in the woods of the training grounds and Tenma is trying to get him to convince him to help teach him how to use a gun. And Hugo asks him, he's like, when's the last time you shot one? And he's like, well, never. And he's like, And he makes the point of saying that my goal is to unteach all the things that other people have learned about shooting a gun and then retrain them in the way that works for me. So in your case, we're kind of skipping a step because you've never even fired a gun. And Tim was like, I'm asking the impossible, but I have no choice but to ask for your help. And Tenma's a nice enough person that I could see Hugo being like, well, I don't know. And Tenma's like, I'll pay you if you'll teach me. And he ends up paying him quite a lot. He gives him the rest of his tuition money. So, I mean, that's Tenma when he meets Hugo, he meets Hugo and seems desperate. So at this point, Tenma seems to have in mind that he's going to go after Johan. And he needs to know how to use a gun because he's seen that Johan has straight up murdered people in front of him and is not afraid to do so and is a stone cold killer. So Tenma's like, I need to be able to defend myself and possibly kill Johan before he kills anybody else. So he not only seems desperate, but we find out later that he did pay Hugo with the remainder of his tuition. I mean, I would have held on to a little of that, Tenma, to keep yourself fed and to find places to stay. I wouldn't have gave him all of it, but maybe he has a savings account. They seem to be looking for you and trying to track you down. So how are you going to get to the bank to withdraw any funds without somebody being suspicious or knowing it's you? I'm just saying, I probably wouldn't have gave him everything. Would have kept like maybe a couple thousand yen or a couple $1,000 for yourself just to be able to use. But that in itself signifies that Tenma does not think that he is going to be gone long. That in itself, the fact that he gave Hugo all of the tuition money, suggests that he expects this to be a short visit. He thinks he's going to go track down Johan, shoot him, and then face the consequences. Or maybe Tenma's whole thing is that he's going to shoot Johan and then kill himself. Maybe that's his atonement. Maybe Tenma has this idea in his head that when he finds Johan, he's going to kill Johan so he can't kill anyone else, and then he's going to shoot himself for being the one that saved him. That seems to be what's hinted at here, is that that's going to be Johan and Tenma's ultimate confrontation, is that they're both going to die. But this series is 74 episodes long. It's 74 episodes long, and we're only on episode 9. So the fact that he gave all his money away and seems to think that this is going to be just a quick trip to town, kill Johan, and then possibly kill himself, this series is very long. So we know as the audience that likely isn't going to be the case. Unless Tenma dies like 20 episodes into this series and then we follow someone else the rest of the series, but I doubt that. I feel like that's not the case. So that's going to be interesting to see where this goes to from here. Like what do we do with this? So curious. But yeah, that's my theory right now, is that Tenma wants to kill himself after he kills Johan. But we're not there yet. And so I like that he has basically like a Rocky training gear on the whole time. He has a sweatsuit. He has like the Converse shoes. He very much looks like, or they're not even Converse, but they're like running shoes. He has the Rocky gear on, ready to train, right? Eye of the Tiger. It's so fascinating that we see this image of a moth being drug away by ants. I'm watching Mob Psycho 100 at the same time, and a few weeks ago I watched an episode where there was this exact same imagery of the moth being eaten by ants, and I'm like, what is the universe trying to tell me, having all of this happen at once? But what I like thematically that it's doing is that Tenma sees himself as the moth, right? He's this, famous doctor who has all this skill, this larger than life figure that had this great, promising future. And now, because of these certain events that have happened, he feels like the ants, all the little things around him, are starting to consume him and drag him away from being able to fly and do what he's meant to do. And it's fascinating, right? It's very interesting. But so we get the Hugo come out and tell him that the first thing he needs to do is learn how to jump rope to create his balance, build up his stamina, and build up, like, just in general, his condition. And we see the little girl that's just able to perfectly jump rope by herself all day long. I felt kind of bad for this girl because throughout the entire story, I'm like, does she not have anything to do? Is she just jump roping and just sitting there? I'm like, girl, Hugo, could you not get her a book set? But then again, does Hugo even know like what language she reads? Could he even find her something to read? The relationship between her and Hugo is fascinating. But yeah, but she seems like she is a quick learner. And watches the trainees. And it's fascinating because he's learning how to shoot a gun, the very thing that killed her mother, and she's just watching him do it. Like, she knows what he's there for. And it's such a fascinating concept that she's sitting there watching Hugo train Tenma to shoot a gun, knowing her circumstances and how she's gotten there. It's just, it's a lot to think about, right? And we get more with that as we go. But she's not phased. She's so conditioned by that lifestyle that nothing phases her. She's like not even wore out, and he's like, I can't do it as well as you do. And she just looks at him like, well, what do you want me to do about it? He's like, do you always keep an eye on the trainees for the trainer? And there's that question of a language barrier. Like, we don't know exactly what language she speaks. I think we'll go back to him asking her. We'll go back to their backstory when Hugo says it. But there's a good possibility that she has no clue what he's saying, and she's just staring at him, and he's like, fine. And he takes her glaring at him like she's trying to tell him to get back to work. And he's like, I have to do it. And there's this moment like he has the bags under his eyes, like he hasn't slept. And he's like, I have to go through with this. I have to be able to shoot a gun so that I can take on Johan and track him down. It's like, okay. And he just has that resolve. And then she looks and he sees the little brambling. They see the brambling land on the ground. And he makes the comment the brambling is looking for food to go feed its chicks. And it's like Tenma doesn't mean to like say the worst things at the worst time, but he's like, oh, it's looking for food for its chicks. And at that point, we kind of had the idea as the audience that this is a very odd relationship between Hugo and the girl. And I'm like, well, there's no mother seemingly in the picture, so did she die? And Tenma, you not thinking about that? And then we find out that yes, she did die, and it was under the worst of circumstances. So there is this concept about the parent and the child and taking care of them, right? Taking care of them. And so the idea, and that idea of parent and child kind of transitions from the mom to Hugo in this case in the weirdest of ways, because he's like, oh, they're getting food for the child. And you can think back on it and take it as Tenma making the relationship between the girl and the mom. But then later when you think about it, Hugo, he feeds the girl, he gets her food and everything, despite the fact that he knows the girl hates him. So we'll talk more about that when we get back to that scene, because the girl just looks at the bird. So she can clearly understand what he's saying. And the bird flies off, and her and Tenma both look at the bird as it goes away. And then Tenma gets back to work. So Hugo typically fixes the meal for everybody. He's got this sweet, nice little kitchen cabinet set with all the nice dishes and everything set up. It's very prim and proper, still very minimalist. But he's used to making them food and everything. And the girl eats it without question. She just eats the food, and Tenma, it very much seemed like a sports anime montage where Tenma's like, I've worked all day, I'm not hungry. And he's like, you have to eat, it's part of your training. And he's like, okay. And like the girl does it without question, even though she's been doing the same thing that he's been doing all day. And you can tell that, yeah, Tenma, he's lost his appetite, not only from the training, but maybe feels like he's taking advantage of them, like they fed him and gave him all this food for free. Well, he ends up paying them the tuition, so I guess it's not for free. But it almost seems like Tenma is kind of hesitant to take advantage of that hospitality that he's doing so much for him. And he's like, okay. And then he goes to eat the soup first. And the girl finishes her meal very quickly and gets done and leaves. So it seems like they do have a strained relationship, in that she leaves the food there and then goes and shuts the door and slams it. So that's interesting. So there is a difference by the end of Tenma's stay there with them in how she acts. So the girl, and this will go back to the bird thing when we get to the whole thing with the nest. But at first the girl finishes meal and leaves immediately. Like she's just surviving. She eats the food, leaves immediately, and that's it. She wants nothing to do with Hugo or Tenma or anyone. She just doesn't have anywhere to go, and she knows she can't survive on her own, so she's just kind of stuck there, right? And that's set up at the beginning of this episode. And so Tenma, he's like, is that your kid or your grandchild? And I'm like, I like that Hugo's like, bold assumption to think I'm old enough to have a grandchild. Which, granted, if he was in the French Foreign Legion in 1979, he was probably born in the late 50s. So he's probably in his 40s. I guess he'd be pretty young, Grandpa Tenma. And he says, no. And then he says that child's mother was shot and killed by me. And Tenma's like, oh. He says, right before her eyes in Myanmar. So he says that while he was in Myanmar, he killed her mother and took the girl with him. And that'll go back to the baby bird later. and that metaphor that Tenma tells her about, that they have to put her back in the nest. And so, yeah, he goes back to that moment and said that when I ran into a hut in the jungle for shelter, they were there. And the first thing we see is him pull the gun and shoot them, right? Or we see the gun pointing at him. But the gun pointing at him is shaking. So the gun pointing at him was not his. The gun that we see in the episode was not his, but hers. The mom had the gun and she pointed it at him. And when he ran in, he was like, I had to shoot or be killed. He said the mother was holding a gun. And if it had been a fraction of a second slower, I would have been shot dead. And that's why I brought the child here. Since she began living with me, she's never smiled. So yeah, so he was like, basically, it was kill or be killed. And this man that's been in the military his whole life, he was like, it was instinct. He was like, and that's like what he's been telling Tenma. He's like, if you don't aim to shoot in 3 seconds, you're dead. And so he's been trained his whole life that. And so when he saw the gun, he was like, nope. And he shot. And then probably saw the child and was like, well, shit. And it was leave the kid there and she'd die in the jungle alone, or take responsibility and take her with him. So there's this idea that Hugo has about taking responsibility, for your actions. He's like, yeah, I killed her mom. I chose to save myself and I killed her. And so I could have left her in the jungle to die and just been done with it. But it's my fault her mom's dead, so I have to take responsibility and I have to take care of her now. And so he just does it. He just makes her food. Takes her home, gives her stuff. He's like, she'll probably die hating me. And Tenma's just like, because it's kind of, it's not the same situation that Tenma's in, but it's the idea of taking responsibility for the actions. And for Tenma, it's kind of the craziest thing is that you have Hugo, who killed this girl's mom, and she's probably going to hate him for life for it, but he's taking responsibility and doing what he has to do to keep her safe as, kind of, atonement almost for doing that, or taking responsibility out of duty. And then you have Tenma, who saved Johan, and now Nina has to suffer for it. And so he's kind of like taking responsibility, being like, yeah, I'm sorry you tried to kill your brother and I brought him back to life and all this bad stuff's happened. So I'm going to take responsibility on your behalf for what I've done so that hopefully you can keep on living. Kind of like what Hugo's done for that girl. In the weirdest of messed up ways, there's a connection there, right? When you have a gun, that sort of thing happens. He's like, yeah, so he's like, whenever you fire a gun, you got to take responsibility for whatever happens. And if you don't like it, you're better off not picking up a gun. I love that message because, yeah, he's like, I made this choice and now I have to live with it. So he's like, if you're going to do this, Tenma, and you fire that gun, you'd best be prepared to take whatever responsibility comes after it. So we'll see, right? And he ends up leaving or goes out of the room for a second. But then once he leaves, the girl comes back, right? So interestingly, she comes back and takes the plates away, and Tenma just stares at her. And she kind of looks at him for a second, and then he goes back to eating his food. So she did go back to clean up the dishes afterwards. She did clean up after Hugo left. Okay. So there was that. So she did go back and clean up. There is that. Interestingly. And he feels like, and she just goes to clean up the dishes. Like, it's just this accepted thing that's happened. She's like, well, what do we do? So it's just part of it. She just does the dishes. And she watches him run and everything. And he goes back, and Tenma starts eating more and getting in line with the training and getting on, getting adjusted to the scenario and everything. And he does like the training with the weight to train his hands so they can hold the gun and handle the recoil of it. So he does the training there. So yeah, Tenma just goes through this methodical motion. And Tenma's a doctor, so he's seasoned in a routine, and he's seasoned in training himself to do a task. So he has the dedication and the effort, and he's driven by this drive to stop Johan. So he's got the resolve. You just throw in the Rocky theme music and this would be set. But as he's running, he notices he smells like some flowers. He smells like that. He says something smells nice like Daphne blossoms. And he gets distracted and slips. I don't know if there's any significance with Daphne blossoms. I am assuming you all will comment down below if there's some kind of symbolic significance about the Daphne blossoms. Maybe. Who knows? I don't know. But she goes down to help him and slides down the hill and offers her hand to him. I love that shot of her grabbing on the tree, and it seems like it's such a symbolic thing that even though she knows he's there to learn how to hold a gun and will possibly kill someone with it, the same like her mom was killed, she still offers her hand to him. And that's interesting, right? Very interesting. And he takes her hand. And then he gets better at the jump roping. She's still sitting there watching him. And then Hugo takes him to the firing range. And again, I got such banana fish vibes, right? I got such banana fish vibes from the firing range. These last 2 episodes have gave me a lot of banana fish vibes. It feels very 90s. Feels very like only we're in Germany instead of the US. But then we have, you know, this dark-haired Asian character that's being taught by this blonde hair, only it's a German instead of an American. It's great. It's good vibes. But yeah, he takes him to the training course and tells him to shoot twice. He tells me, go back on this episode. And then he tells him, let me go back to finding this. He takes him to the range and tells him that when you shoot your gun, you pull the trigger twice. And it will raise the probability that you'll get your target. He's like, don't shoot. And also that shooting twice kind of makes up for possible hesitation when you fire. So he tells him to shoot twice. Because, yeah, he's like, the probability is that when you shooting a person is much different than a target. You're going to be in a totally different mindset. So if you train your body to shoot the trigger twice, even if you're hesitant, you still have a better shot of hitting someone. If you can't do that, you can consider yourself dead. Okay. So then Tenma goes to aim at the target. And we don't actually see if he hits the target right on. We don't get that till the very end of their training thing, right? We don't see how the first target thing goes. Because we do see how he's shaky when he first aims at the target. His hands are shaking. And then we hear the sound of the 2 gunshots and the birds leaving. And we just get the 2 bullets. But we don't see the result of it. I like they don't show us the results. They don't. And instead, after that, we see Tenma go and get groceries, which is pretty bold. So Tenma goes to make Tenma makes the meal. He makes the meal for Hugo and the girl. Which, bold move, Cotton, to go in town when you're currently being suspected for murder and nobody recognizes him, so that's good. He comes back with this onion and this big-ass carrot, and we're using, like, the sauce and everything to make, what does he call it? We'll get it here in a second, of him making the meal. And he has the chopsticks there. And I love that Hugo's like, what is this? And he's like, well, you're preparing meals for me, so this is mine. He said, I want to make you some Japanese food. And he says, this is nikujaga. He says, I hope you like it. And he made chopsticks out of wood. Like, look at him. And Hugo's like, okay. But the girl picks up on it easily. She easily, like, knows exactly what to do. She's a very quick learner, right? And Hugo struggles with the chopsticks. He can't pick up the potatoes and everything with it, which is funny. And I like that Tenma kind of laughs at him. He's like, well, it's funny. You don't know how to use chopsticks. You're this big teacher and you're so good. And he tries to show the girl, be like, hey, look. He's like, he's not good at it. He's like, go on. He's like, check it out. And then Hugo sees what he's doing and is like, you gonna make fun of me some more? I love that look when he just glares at him. It's hilarious. When he looks over and he's like, ah! And Hugo's like, really? We're going to do this? It's great. I love it. It's just like a lot of levity. Like this episode's been really like just very somber and serious, and that moment of levity where Tenma can laugh at Hugo and the chopsticks. It's kind of heartwarming. You have a mercenary, a girl that's the daughter of a girl he killed, and a guy learned to shoot a gun. All this doom and gloom in this episode, and yet it's somehow the most wholesome, heartwarming thing in the world. Monster, what do we do? But it's just getting to the idea that beneath the surface of all of this, despite him being a mercenary, despite her being an orphan that was orphaned by him, and despite Tenma going there to learn to shoot a gun to possibly go and kill a man, despite all of it, they're still at the end of the day humans that are just having this dinner together, and that's it, right? And Tenma's presence brings them closer together, which is fascinating, right? And so we get Tenma with the holster, and he says, you have 3 seconds to take it out. And he says, tells him to aim. And he tells him to do it again. And he says, tells him to aim again. And then he shows him how to take apart a gun, and he times him to see how fast he can do it. And which would make sense that Tenma would be very precise. He's a surgeon, so he would have all this surgical precision, which is kind of dangerous because with Tenma's skill set, he could be a very effective person with a weapon and Lunge realizes that. That's why he's asking Hugo. He's like, I need to know what we're dealing with going into this. And it's like, okay. Like, who's he going to go after? You would think he's going after Johan, but does Lunge believe that fully or not? That's the question. And Tenma's facial hair is growing out a little bit, and then he sees the girl not watching him in this time, and that's what makes him stop. And it's curious that when he stops and looks at her and he has this like look of awe, even though his hair is growing out and he has facial hair, he looks very young in that moment where he's looking at her like, what's wrong? And she's found the baby bird. And he's like, oh no, it fell out of its nest. We have to put it back. It needs to be taken care of. And he's like, oh no, you have to return it. And she tries to run away from him. And he's like, that chick will die if you don't. It's difficult to raise it away from a nest. It's rare that you can do it successfully. And yeah, that little baby bird's struggling there. And he says, let's return it to its nest, to its mother. And she looks down at the bird and finally is like, okay. And he climbs back up and takes it. And I feel like the little girl at that point, when she's back with Hugo later on, she realizes later on, and my dog is like, play with me, that she's like, Hugo, while not her mother, is simulating the act of keeping her in the nest. Because if he'd left her in the jungle to die, she would have. If he'd left her in the jungle by herself, and if she had stayed there to take care of herself, it wouldn't have worked out. It was rare for it to happen successfully. But the fact that he took her home with him, put her in essentially another nest, and gave her food and took care of her, while he's not her mom and he's not trying to be, it's the idea that he's doing that so that she will live. And I feel like Tenma's actions of putting the baby bird back in the nest kind of shows her that, because when they have dinner again after Tenma leaves, she starts to laugh at him, and their relationship kind of develops from there further, right? Because she realizes what Hugo's been doing. Despite the circumstance, he's trying to keep her alive. And just like Tenma was working to keep the baby bird alive. And so then we see him like shoot the gun, and his aim's not bad. It's near the bullseye or close to it. It's not bad at all. I mean, there's lots of shots around it, like where he had missed before. There's lots of shots around it, like at first he missed a lot, but the last couple shots are really close. And he says 3 seconds. Everything is determined in 3 seconds. If there's even an instant of hesitation, the one who will be killed will be you. And then, yeah, we see Tenma with the gun looking very, very, very serious. And I don't know, it's just like, it makes me very sad to see Tenma, who's this doctor who's been on about saving lives, learning to shoot a gun to take one. It's a statement, right? That he looks so serious there. He looks so serious. And then And then and I love that shot as it gets closer and closer. It goes from him like shooting the gun. And I want to go back to that scene there. He takes the bird back and hands it. And as he shoots the gun, he gets even closer. And then we cut back to Lunge interviewing Hugo. And he says, so how was his performance record when he finished the course? And Hugo says, technically he had a perfect score, and his physical condition had also improved. His concentration was phenomenal. So, his score, so he said the score was perfect. He had good physical condition, and his concentration was phenomenal, which should not be surprising because he's a doctor. That all goes hand in hand. He said, however, and Lunge says, what do you mean, however? He says, being able to shoot a person is another issue altogether. Oh? Whether he's able to shoot his first person will determine whether he will or won't be able to use his gun. So, Hugo says that a person obviously is different than a target. And he says if he can't shoot his first person, he's not gonna be able to use the gun. So Lunge at this point, according to Hugo, Lunge is aware that Tenma has never shot a gun. Which would essentially, I don't think, did we ever find out how, I'm assuming that Moore and the two parents, they weren't shot with a gun, they had their throats slit. So, I mean, that doesn't absolve Tenma from the crimes because the people were slit with a knife, not shot with a gun. So, Moore, the Fortners, and the other deaths could still be pinned technically on Tenma, just not with the gun. But now Lunge knows that Tenma has a gun, and he's going somewhere with it to presumably do something to someone, and now Lunge is like, well, now we know that he has possible motive, that Tenma has a motive, he has the means, he has a gun, now we have to figure out where he's going. But Hugo won't tell him. He says, I wonder which way he'll go. Will he use the gun, or will he not? So the question is, will Tenma be able to kill? And what will that do if he does? If he can kill, will it stop with Johan? If he can't kill, what will he do then? So there's a lot of questions coming out of this that Lunge is trying to find out. And he's like, well, never mind about that. We'll worry about that 40 episodes from now. He's like, do you have any idea where he went? And Hugo doesn't tell him. He's like, who could say? Doesn't know it. And Lunge's like, well, I'd like you to tell me if you know. Lunge has a way of just trying to be like very congenial, but even like you can tell when Lunge has this breaking point where he's like, come on, tell me. And you know, where he kind of hits a wall. But so far in this conversation, he's been very congenial with Hugo. And Hugo's just like, no, I'm not telling you. And so he's gone, and he leaves the note for Hugo at the house. And I want to see what language it was in. He leaves the note at the house, and it's in German. He says, thank you for everything these 5 months. Encloses the rest of my tuition. And please help yourself to the Nikujaga. You have my sincere thanks. He left a PS though. So, okay. So, I want to go back to that message there. Was what he just said in the thing, was that the PS? Okay. Yeah, Dank. Okay, so he said, Lieben Dank for this, Kinzo Tenma. He says, Das, ich beleg. Oh my gosh. They say where he's going? He says, what he read was the PS. Okay, so he doesn't say exactly where he's going, does he? Anybody that can read German, if y'all can read that, that'd be great. Enclosed in the rest is the rest of my tuition. Help yourself to the nikujaga. You have my sincere thanks. I love Hugo's like, geez. Like, just being nice and making us a meal before he goes. And you can tell that, like, it's so quiet between them that they're both sad that he's gone. But the girl picks up the chopsticks, like, to honor Tenma and starts eating. And then I love that he says, damn it. And he can't pick up the potatoes. And that gets her to laugh. And she laughs for the first time at him. And it's like this whole time he's been trying to like take care of her because he feels bad that he killed her mom out of defense. And he wants to take care of her. And the first time she laughs. And he just looks so sincere. He's like, she laughed. But he won't tell Lunge. He's like, how about it? Do you know where he went? You know where he went, don't you? And he won't say. And he tells Lunge that, I'm sorry, but I can't tell you that. And Lunge's like, What is this Kenzo Tenma effect that he has on people? What is this? He's like, fine, that's fine. You can leave. And the crazy thing is that you have two different types of ways that Johan and Tenma make people not talk. You have Junkers who wouldn't talk because Johan had instilled this fear of death in him. That he was like, I'll die if I say anything, so I don't want to say anything. You have that, but then you have Tenma whose kindness instills this feeling that Hugo's like, I don't want to betray him, so no, I'm not going to tell you. So you have Johan and Tenma, these two characters who both have influenced the people around them to not say anything about them, but with Johan it's through fear, and with Tenma it's through kindness. And it's fascinating, isn't it? It's fascinating. And he lets Hugo go. And then from there, Hugo goes down and sees the girl. And Lunge's like, like he's thinking, what do we do now? And when he goes down to see the girl in the rain, she's sitting there with the umbrella. And I thought for the longest time that he was just going to walk with her and just get soaking wet, because that seemed like something he wouldn't care if that happened to him. I feel like he wouldn't care if he got rained on or not. But the little girl with the umbrella, she reaches out her hand to him to grab it. And then he like pulls out and she grabs like his 3 fingers, and she looks up and smiles at him. And he's like about to cry. And it's so sweet. It's like she grabs a hold of him, and he's like this bond that's developed between them because of Tenma being there. It's really sweet. I'm like, oh my gosh, show. Give us these two side characters that are here for one episode, and you fall in love with them despite everything, and it's like, ugh. But yeah, they end up having this wholesome little relationship at the end of it. And it's like, man, like they're influenced in a good way by Tenma. But Tenma doesn't get to see it, right? Tenma doesn't get to see them have this great relationship at the end as they walk away with the umbrella over them. Instead, we cut to this truck, and Tenma's in the back of it as it's raining, wrapped up, looking like with dead eyes as he's going along his merry way, headed to Verdun. Oh, man, it's wild, y'all. It's wild. But yeah, so Lunge's on the trail. Again, rain washes away lots of evidence. So Lunge's on the trail looking for Tenma. He's only a few steps behind, but he's trying to find any leads that he can. Tenma's on his way to Verdun to possibly face Johan. He's learned to shoot from Hugo, this ex-mercenary. And he has this relationship with this girl. And here we are. So good. That was a nice episode to give us backstory, to make us understand what's going on. It's like, good deal. Thanks, show. Thanks for that. And now we can move on to whatever madness is going to be down the road. I'm not watching the previews, so I have no clue where this is headed. But now that felt like a definitive flashback exposition. Good to know. And now I'm terrified for what's to come next. So I feel like there's so many themes in this episode alone that it's very much worth talking about. I'm curious about the symbolism with the Daphne flowers, if there's anything to that. I'm curious historically if there's anything to do with the conflicts they're talking about, because I'm not a history major and I should know more about international history, but I don't. So I'm curious, those of you that know, if you can shed more light in the comments about that. And I'm curious about the letter. If there was anything in the letter in German that we got that would suggest something. I want to go back and try to butcher it in German and see if I can read it. I want to go back and butcher that in German and see what the letter said, because some of you may not be able to see it from the tiny screenshot that's in the corner here. So the letter said, Lieben Kier Bernhardt, which should be him. Vielen Danke für den, it's hard to read because it's Hinschen in den Liebeken fin Hanneschen das Westflick Hannessen habe ich begelkig der Tenzo Kimma PS Essenli Bible Nikujaga das ich für Li Gehorch habe Nochmals Victin Herrlichen Danke für alles. I just butchered that beyond all belief. But if y'all can read that in German, if anything, I'm curious to know if Hugo really didn't know anything about what Tenma was planning to do next, or if he did know and just didn't tell Lunge. I think it could go either way. I think it could be both. So, curiouser and curiouser. But yeah, that was a really good episode. I'm really curious for what's going to happen now. We're going to Verden. Is Johan going to be there? Is Johan already gone? Is he just leaving a breadcrumb trail to lure Tenma to a certain destination? I guess we'll find out. But in the meantime, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe. Take care. And yeah, I'll be back next week with the next episode, episode 10 of Monster. Bye.